Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the latest on how water companies may be about to face some consequences for their reckless destruction of our environment. And I don't just mean because of the change of government, although that will certainly be squeezing them as well. Because in amongst all the fuss of the election, there was a Supreme Court case. Very interesting. But anyway, bit of background. The Thatcherite privatisation of our water utilities has run aground, been leaking oil everywhere, and now the oil is about to catch fire. We were told that privatisation would bring investment, and yet decades later, the water companies are complaining they can't do their jobs properly because they're working with crumbling Victorian infrastructure. They've somehow managed to pile up incredible debts, but not actually modernise the system or even build new reservoirs. And since leaving the EU, they've been pumping untreated sewage into our waterways as if it was their job to do so. The reason being it has become cheaper for water companies to dump sewage than it is to treat it properly. And of course, a private company will prioritise profits over doing their job. And the reason why it's become cheaper is a combination of a few changes in the last few years. First, Brexit trade barriers means that we now have difficulty importing the chemicals needed to treat the sewage. That has increased the costs of treatment. Second, the government has made it easier to dump by basically allowing the industry more excuses for doing so and scaling back the monitoring of water quality around outlets. This will be changing. But in the meantime, it seems that we don't have to rely entirely on the change of government to bring about a change in attitude from water companies. The current legal framework has bitten them on the arse a little bit as well. The Good Law Project are reporting a success in the Supreme Court, who have ruled that United Utilities, the largest water company in the UK, is legally, potentially at any rate, legally liable for the damage caused by their sewage discharges. And although it was United Utilities who were taken to court, as they were, for this particular case, and they're certainly the worst and most obvious polluter, this puts other water companies in the frame as well. The details of this particular case were that the Manchester Ship Canal Company wanted to bring a case against United Utilities for the damage done to their waterways by the sewage dumping. United Utilities argued that they were protected legally from private cases like this being brought against them, that the only people who could take legal action against them were the government or Ofwat, the water regulator. They won their case in the High Court and then the Court of Appeal, but it's gone to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court have said, nah, mate, can't be right that the owner of property being damaged by another company can't see redress to protect their property from harm. The President of the Supreme Court, in his summary, said that the starting point had to be, if you own property, you've got a right to protect that property by common law. United Utilities had argued that the Water Industry Act protected them from cases against them, but the Supreme Court have noted, look, the legislation doesn't require you to dump sewage to carry out your role. So you can't be protected for acts which are not supposed to be part of your duties. So in a nutshell, if you damage someone else's property, they can take you to court. It doesn't mean they will win the case. That'll depend on the specific arguments, but they can take that legal action. So the water industries had a privileged position up until now. The usual arguments about the benefits of privatisation were a sick joke to begin with, because Tories always argue that competition drives standards up and prices down. There's no competition for water. Your water company is determined by your postcode. And they've also been a law unto themselves. This judgment says they can be taken to court for damage they've caused, even if the damage was not caused negligently. So the fact that the government have given them extra green lights to pollute won't necessarily help them. So we can expect to see not just this case by the Manchester Ship Canal Company, but others as well. There's been a lot of damage done. And while water companies look at this judgment, which is final, it's from the highest court in the land, there's nowhere else to go, they can consider the legislative changes coming their way as well. No bonuses for water bosses until they've cleaned their act up. Criminal charges for executives whose companies repeatedly break the law. How often do we get into a situation where a company, an organisation breaks the law and there's like redress, like a fine or something, like Anglian Water have broken the law again. They've been fined £50,000. Do the executives care about that? No, it's a business expense. If there's criminal charges coming their way, let's see how their behaviour changes then. None of this waving away court cases just expecting your customers to pay the fines. Something that would be good as part of media reform as well, maybe. Lose 3 defamation cases and editors and owners are in the frame for a bit of prison time. See how they report on people then. Water companies are also going to be forced to monitor every outlet again, and it will be independently supervised, no marking your own homework. Because remember, the information we have on the scale of dumping is not the full picture. We don't have the full picture because monitoring was stripped away as far back as when David Cameron was Prime Minister and decided it was a good idea to put Liz Truss in charge of DEFRA. Then, of course, automatic fines for illegal sewage discharges, and they won't be allowed to add that to the bill for customers. And although there's going to be a lot of demand for parliamentary time with all the changes Labour need to introduce, I don't think they'll want to be leaving these ones until the last minute. I can see this one happening by next year. It'll take time for the impacts to be felt, and Labour want the impacts to be felt by the next election. And water pollution, major source of anger amongst a lot of voters, including Conservative voters. Sooner Labour deal with this, the better. You know, Labour would be very motivated to clean up for all sorts of reasons. So I don't think we're going to be waiting a ridiculous amount of time for this. There'll also be a lot of public attention on the issue. Remember, Thames Water is still going to the wall. Although maybe we'll let them deal with the private legal cases against them before we take them into public ownership. I want that done without loading ourselves up with their debts and ill-gotten liabilities. But the tide is turning here. I just hope in a few years' time people really get it into their heads what the Conservatives really are, and always will be, or at least enough of them to demand better of governments in the future. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for further content and click the like button. You can also sign up for memberships if you'd like to support the channel further. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.